America is celebrating freedom again. Flags, fireworks, speeches, songs. The word will be everywhere. Freedom. But freedom is strange because most people don't experience it as an idea. They experience it through bills, laws, work, schools, police, courts, contracts, politics, religion, and consequences. You can be free to choose, but only from options someone else designed. Free to speak until the cost of saying the wrong things get too high. Free to work while trapped by what survival costs. Free to believe while shaped by what you were taught to fear. So maybe the question isn't whether we're free. The question is who taught us to call obedience freedom? America doesn't just celebrate freedom. America tells a story with it. Freedom is one of the most powerful words in the country because it does more than describe a right. It gives people an identity. It tells them they're independent, self-directed, responsible for their own path, and protected from anyone who would try to control them. That story is emotionally powerful. People don't only believe in freedom intellectually, they feel it. They defend it. They pass it down. They sing about it, salute it, build holidays around it, and teach it to children before those children are old enough to understand the conditions attached to it. But every story has a frame, and the frame matters. When a society tells people they're free, the next question should be, free to do what? Under what conditions? And at what cost? Because freedom isn't only about what a person is allowed to say. It's about what happens after they say it. It's not only about the right to work. It's about whether work gives a person enough room to live. It's not only about the right to vote. It's about whether the choices in front of people can actually change the conditions around them. Even belief isn't simple. A person can have the right to believe what they want, but still be afraid to question what they inherited because the cost might be family, community, identity, or safety. That's where freedom becomes more complicated than the slogan. A person can be told they're free while still being trained to move carefully. They can be told they have options while every option carries a penalty. They can be told they're independent while their life is shaped by systems they never designed, contracts they barely understand, prices they can't control, laws they didn't write, and consequences they can't afford. It doesn't mean freedom is fake. It means freedom is incomplete when it only exists as a word. The easiest version of freedom to sell is choice. Choice feels like power because it gives people movement. You can choose what to buy, where to work, what to watch, what to post, what to believe, what to study, who to vote for, and how to present yourself to the world. Choice isn't the same as power. Power is not picking from the menu. Power is knowing who made the menu, who set the prices, who owns the building, and what happens if you refuse to order. That's the part people are rarely taught to question. Most people are choosing from a blank page. They're choosing inside pressure. Rent, debt, insurance, family responsibility, transportation, food, and the fear of falling behind all shape the decision before the person ever calls it a choice. So when a person chooses a job, the choice may be real, but it may not be free in the deeper sense. Sometimes it's not a path toward a life they designed. Sometimes it's the most survivable option on the table. Education works the same way. A student may choose a school, a major, a career path, or a version of success. But those choices are often shaped by zip code, money, testing, discipline, access, and the quiet lesson that success means learning how to fit inside of the system before you're allowed to rise in it. You also have politics. People can vote, and that right matters. People fought and died for it, but the field has usually been filtered long before the ballot reaches your hand. Money, parties, media, donors, districts, lobbyists, and power decide which choices become visible and which ones never become realistic. Speech works the same way. Some people can speak boldly and be called honest. Others speak boldly and become a threat. The right may exist on paper, but the cost not evenly distributed. And that's the hidden pressure inside of modern freedom. People are told they're free because they can choose, but nobody asks whether the choices are honest. A person can have options and still not have power. This is why freedom can't be understood only as a personal attitude. It has to be understood through the things that shape daily life. Law tells people what is allowed. Police decide how permission is enforced. Courts decide who has the money, time, and standing to defend themselves. Schools teach people what success should look like and sometimes trains obedience more effectively than imagination. Religion can give people meaning, courage, and community. But religious institutions can also make fear sound holy and obedience sound righteous. Politics gives people a voice, but often narrows the range of what they're allowed to seriously imagine. Finance turns survival into a monthly test. Work controls time, media controls attention, social pressure controls speech, technology controls rhythm. After enough repetition, strain starts to look normal, exhaustion gets called responsibility, adjustment gets called realism, compliance gets called common sense. That's how control settles into daily life. It doesn't always arrive as force, sometimes it arrives as routine. Nobody has to tell a person they're trapped if leaving is too expensive. Nobody has to silence a person directly if honesty can cost them their work, their family, their reputation, approval, or safety. Nobody has to remove freedom completely if fear can teach people how to edit themselves. The cage doesn't always need bars. Sometimes it only needs paperwork, payments, penalties, and consequences. Black history makes this contradiction impossible to ignore. Not because the question of freedom belongs only to Black Americans, it doesn't, but Black American history reveals how easily a country can announce freedom before allowing people to actually live inside of it. Emancipation ended legal slavery and that mattered, but freedom without land, protection, money, and political power left formerly enslaved people exposed to new forms of control. The words changed before the conditions did. Citizenship was promised, then challenged. Voting rights were granted, then restricted. Education was offered, then segregated and underfunded. Work was available, but often shaped by exploitation, debt, exclusion, and limited access. Housing became a symbol of the American dream, while maps, banks, policies, and local power helped decide who could build equity and who would be locked out of it. And the point's not that nothing changed. Change happened because people fought for it. They organized, sacrificed, built institutions, challenged laws, created culture, protected each other, and refused to accept the narrow version of freedom that was handed to them. But pattern matters. Again and again, freedom appeared first as a language. Then it had to be fought for as condition. It shows that freedom is not fully measured by what a nation declares. It's measured by what people can actually do without being punished, blocked, priced out, erased, or forced back to dependence. A country can say someone's free and still control where they live, how they work, what protections they receive, and whether their votes count, how their children are educated, and how quickly the system becomes suspicious of their movement. That's not only a Black story, but Black history exposes it with a clarity America has often tried to avoid. The hidden truth is not simply that America failed to live up to freedom. The deeper truth is that America learned how to separate freedom from power. The language stayed powerful, the ceremony stayed intact, the individual remained responsible, but the conditions around that individual were often left untouched. That's where the story becomes useful. Once freedom is reduced to personal choice, almost any outcome can be explained as personal failure. A poor person chose wrong. An exhausted person lacks discipline. An angry person is unstable. A person who questions authority becomes a problem. And a person who questions the country can be made to look like they are questioning freedom itself. That's how the conversation gets trapped. The limits of the system get turned into character flaws, and over time, people learn to defend those limits as common sense. But there's another way to see it. People make choices every day. That part's true. But they make them under pressure. Bills waiting, consequences attached, and paths that were already narrow before they arrived. The deeper question is not whether people are choosing, it's who benefits from how narrow those choices have become. Survival can take up so much space in a person's life that questioning the arrangement starts to feel like luxury. Debt becomes normal. Work becomes identity. Politics becomes theater. Education becomes performance. Law gets treated as neutral even when the experience of it is not. And somewhere inside of all of that, obedience starts looking like responsibility. That's where freedom stops being a slogan. It becomes a test of power. The modern version is harder to see because it rarely announces itself as control. It arrives as convenience. Faster delivery, more platforms, more choices. More ways to publish yourself, teach yourself, sell something, build a brand, research a question, or speak to people across the world without asking permission from the old gatekeepers. That's real expansion. It shouldn't be dismissed. But the old gate didn't disappear. It changed shape. Now, a person can have access without stability. They can be visible without owning the platform that makes them visible. They can express themselves all day and still have almost no control over the rules governing that expression. They can build a life online, then watch the platform change its terms, shift the algorithm, bury their audience, or make yesterday's strategy useless overnight. Work has changed shape too. A person may have more ways to earn, more ways to brand themselves, and more ways to stay connected. But if the job still pays just enough to survive and not enough to step away from survival, then the freedom is thinner than it looks. The system doesn't always have to stop people from moving. Sometimes it keeps them moving so constantly that they barely have time to notice who set the direction. And that's the smoother version of control. It's not a locked door. A life filled with open doors that lead back to the same stress, pressure, and load. You can post, work, buy, vote, stay connected, and still depend on rules you didn't write, prices you can't control, platforms you don't own, and permission that can be withdrawn without warning. When dependence becomes normal, obedience no longer has to be demanded. It becomes part of the cadence. None of this means people are helpless. That would be too easy, and it'd be false. People resist. They build, they lead, they organize, they learn, they make families, cultures, music, language. But the point isn't to deny human strength. The point is to stop mistaking survival for freedom. Adapting to pressure is not the same as being free from it. Making the best of your options is not the same as having the power to change them. Being allowed to move is not the same as moving without fear, debt, punishment, shame, or permission holding the leash. Freedom isn't just the right to choose from what's already been approved. It's the ability to question why the choices are so narrow in the first place. It's the ability to ask who benefits from the limits, and to refuse the idea that every path already priced, filtered, managed, or made too costly to challenge is a full measure of life. A society doesn't have to remove freedom completely. It only has to make real freedom difficult enough that most people learn not to reach for it. Difficult to tell the truth without consequence. Difficult to walk away without collapse. Difficult to rest without guilt. Difficult to question without being labeled ungrateful. Difficult to refuse without being punished. After a while, people stop calling that control. They call it growing up. They call it being realistic. They call it how the world works. Once that happens, a person can spend years defending the structure that keeps them contained. Because admitting the cage exists would mean asking why they were taught to decorate it. That's the uncomfortable part. America can celebrate freedom and still avoid asking who actually has access to it. A society can give people choices while keeping the most important ones out of reach. A person can be free on paper and still live inside conditions they didn't choose. But realism shouldn't mean accepting every limit as natural. Responsibility shouldn't mean learning how to obey without ever asking who benefits from your obedience. And freedom shouldn't mean movement without a managed space. It has to mean the ability to question the space itself, because the cage didn't disappear. It learned how to look like freedom. And freedom without power is permission. Goes with